All right, this is the Coach Haas podcast, sponsored by Sports Rehab PA. It's been about a 6-week hiatus here. We had a lot of things going on. Michael had himself, well, he didn't. His wife had a baby girl. We'll let Mike talk about that. Congratulations, Michael. That's good stuff.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
How's that going?
It's going. It's a process in the beginning, you know. I mean, it's everything I definitely expected. I mean, I definitely mentally prepared, probably because I have kids I have friends that have kids already. So, you know, you hear about it and you kind of, you know, you see it. So, you know, and the biggest thing in the beginning is just, you know, they eat every 2 hours. So it's just very demanding, you know, and, you know, especially this one. And she's been alert since like the first hour she's born, like looking around. I don't know what she sees, but she wants you to like take her everywhere and hold her and do stuff. So that makes it a little challenging. So, well, you know, we'll leave her down and let her kind of, sometimes she's got to cry and soothe herself. But sometimes she just starts like raging and it's like, you know, you got to take her. So
it's magical. It's magical.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge though. So it'll be interesting when she starts moving and crawling and stuff to see how much of a rugrat she'll be just going all over, because she's going to figure it out because she just doesn't stop moving. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Good for you, man. I'm happy for you guys.
Thank
Hey,
you.
listen, before all this happened, you were in the woods. I think this is how the story goes. You guys can tell me if it's different, but you guys were in the woods and you found one another working out. Or not the woods, I'm sorry, the park. Make it sound a little bit better. You were at the park and you ran into one another? Is that how this – I mean, we'll get into it a little bit more, but –
Yeah, I think, you know, we were just running the same trail in Tyler Park, and I heard him coming up, you know, so I just, like, turned around and back to clear. There's actually a split right where I was, so I'm like, all right, I'll just step out of the way. And then when I turned around, we've been following each other on Instagram. I recognized him right away just from
Gotcha.
Instagram. So
Gotcha.
we just talked for maybe, you know, whatever, 5 minutes or 7 minutes or something, and then
Okay.
he just sped off, and I like kind of slogged behind him.
So listen, we have another great guest on tonight. Again, Mike doing his due diligence here, grabbing some great guests for us. Tonight we're going to speak with Bob Kaehler. Kaehler, am I saying that correctly?
Right, man.
All right. Haas and Frost is hard to say, so I won't let you say that one. Haas is a lot easier for you. So, so what we'll do is I'm going to have you give us some of your background. Tell us about your story. Get back into your early teens and bring us up to, you know, where we're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, so like I've kind of fell into human performance when I was 9. I grew up in the 70s, and my dad was an avid runner. And this is like when Gatorade first came out. He used to come back after his runs and he'd drink the green Gatorade, you know, like. And I was like 9. I'm like, hey, I want to try some of that Gatorade. My dad's like, you can only have some if you come running with me. So I said, all right. So I started doing these 3-mile runs with him, and then we do track runs, and not long after, I was kind of like hooked on just the challenge of pushing myself at that age, at 9 years old, like doing these longer runs. And then I started, you know, I just kept going. I just did longer runs, try to do, you know, cross country team, and, you know, just doing some other sports. So I kind of figured out what I really liked back then. You know, like I used to do long bike rides on my own, like 10, 15, 20-mile bike rides back when, you know, nobody was really doing that stuff.
Right.
You know?
You're talking like age 9, 10 years old you're doing
Yeah,
this.
the bike riding started probably not too. I bought a Peugeot back then, a Peugeot 10-speed. I had the paper out, I had good money, so I was just buying I'm like, hey, I want a good bike. So I went out, bought a bike, and I would just do these long rides and, you know, kind of to challenge yourself, you know. And
where'd you grow up?
I grew up on Long Island, Huntington.
Okay.
Like around the water, Huntington Harbor. So it was a beautiful place to grow up. I mean,
Wow.
Beautiful open space, like in the Comstead State Park was part of like Lloyd Harbor, where Billy Joel used to live. It was nice.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I didn't live in that neighborhood, but I was not too far from it. And then I got into boating, and, you know, I had Coast Guard license when I was 12. So I was like water skiing, and I would just do everything outside I could do.
It's awesome.
Wow.
And then so I got into rowing in high school, a rowing club. Back then, there was no rowing in Long Island. There was no rowing. We were the only club in Long Island at the time. I started running my junior year. They showed up. They just moved from Oyster Bay to Huntington, and they were doing PA announcements. And I'm like, I was a water guy, always on the water. I was like, hey, this sounds pretty cool. And I like endurance. I didn't know anything about rowing, so I didn't know it was like endurance sport. But so I fell into rowing, and I was instantly hooked. So that kind of drove my college decision. I decided college based on schools that are rowing. And, so it kind of evolved that way. And then, I just decided to, I still have the magazines from, you join rowing, U.S. rowing, and then you get the magazines. And then I started seeing like national team pictures on the front cover. And I'm like, it looked pretty cool. I'm like, I wonder if I could do that, So, so then I started doing the pre-elite national team in college. I tried to make the under 23 teams back then. And, I didn't make it, but it kind of opened my eyes to what I could do. So I decided to just push on after college, and I started training. I was just working construction. I was a chem major in college, but I just, I didn't really care about that. I just wanted to train and row. Right. Like I did the college thing, but I was more interested in the rowing. And so then I just moved on to, I tried to make the Olympic team in '88. So I graduated in '86, and then I spent 2 years just working construction, training my ass off. I won't go into the whole story about it. I got blackballed by the national team coach, but I didn't make it in '88. And then I was like out of money. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I ended up I was doing construction after the Olympics were over. I was down in Cape May. I had lifeguarded in Cape May for a couple summers in college. So I went back. My girlfriend cheated on me while I was away. I didn't make the Olympic team. I was like, how would I'm just going back to the beach for one last summer. And then I fell off a roof 30 feet, scaffolding broke. I broke my arm and dislocated my shoulder. And I wanted to just do the beach racing that summer. So that was like June. And then one of the guys in the squad was a physical therapist. So he rehabbed me back, and I ended up winning everything that summer. South Jerseys, USLA. So it kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, I did this chemistry, and I didn't really want to be a chemist. And so that's how I decided, I'm going to go to PT school. So I just
He was like, holy shit, this guy healed me. And like, you don't think like these injuries like that you can never come back from. And all of a sudden, you're recovering, and it's like, kind of becomes a little bit addictive, You're like, wow.
Yeah. It kind of really piqued my interest because, literally in 4 weeks I was back rowing. I didn't file the orthopedic sword. I busted my cast off when I was rowing. I'm like, how they gave me the bank cast. I cracked it the first day. I'm like, there's no way. I was right.
I gotta row.
I was rowing. I'm like, I'm not keeping the cast on. But anyway, so that it all fell into place, where I could, take all the stuff I learned in college and actually put it to use. And then, the PT was it kind of piqued my interest. So then I went and, I did a 2-year master's at Columbia. I was training through, like, literally I would just train on any time I had free time in the gym, because it was at 168th Street, in Harlem, in Spanish Harlem. So there wasn't much rowing going on. But then, then I graduated in May of '91, and a month later I was going to Europe for my first World Championships national team. So I just became a PT, and then boom, I was already over like at world class level. I mean, I've done some senior under 23 teams in '87 and '89, but it kind of just fell into place. So, so that really started this process where I was a PT and I was on the national team for 10 years. I did 3 Olympic Games, won 4 World Championships. I trained on every system you could imagine. I had a Russian coach for 3 years, British coach for three years, and then American coaches. So I trained all different systems, and, we were out in the Olympic training centers, and so I kind of had like a mass exposure to A, high level training, and then B, the wake of injuries that I was witnessing.
Sure.
Trying to figure out why there were so many injuries, and we're doing all this strength training and all these other things, and it's not really working because there's just tons of injuries,
Right.
And so it kind of evolved into what I do today. That I started asking those questions a long time ago, So I took some Great Cook course. I took the FMS course in 1997. Like,
wow.
Before anybody was doing it.
Right? Yeah.
Shirley Sarman courses. I did all that stuff. But I was like, I was just saying that they're missing something here. Mm-hmm. These are people that haven't really, like, I train my body. And, like, if I told you stuff, it's insane. Like, the stuff people do today is not even, it was mind-boggling what we did. Like
Dude, give us a little insight into some of the stuff you've done. You know?
So like the Russian coaches, like Steve, you know who Stephen Fleck is? He was the man in strength conditioning in the United States back in the 90s. He was the USOC strength conditioning coach. He wrote for the Journal of Strength Conditioning. He was the head strength training coach out at Colorado Springs. And we did two altitude training camps out there because the Russian, Igor Grenko was the Russian coach. He loved altitude training. So we had never done that before. So we started doing it. And then like while we were out there, we did one in the winter time. So we had to actually do all the stuff on the rowing machines and then do the weight training. We weren't actually on the water, but we were rowing the whole time. And Stephen Fleck watched us do one of our workouts. And he's like, this is insane. It's mind-boggling what you're doing. The volume and the intensity we were doing like 1,500 rep sets with like, at weights like 70% of your body weight or more.
Wow.
It would be 3 hours until you like, you know, and that was 3 days a week. So we were spending a massive amount of neural energy and just like, and so like at the end of a year, I didn't get any faster on the rowing machine. Like really not any faster.
You weren't really able to recover.
I don't even know, you know, like I just, in my mind, I'm like, why are we doing all this? It's like,
Right.
you know, I'm smashing myself to pieces. Plus we were still rowing 25 hours a week on top of the weights. We were doing like tons of rowing. It wasn't just the weights were just like a secondary thing. So, you know, so I just was like, that kind of like piqued my curiosity about all the things I do today. It just like, it drove me to like ask better questions and start taking all these other courses and try to figure out like, why this is all not working the way it really should be. And so, and also Jay Kearney, he was the USOC physiologist. I used to sit in his office every free moment when we were training. I'd go, I just picked their brains. I just wanted to know as much as I could know.
That's it. It's all about curiosity.
Yeah.
And so
give us some insight onto, what it is that you do. I know you have this, I see you on Instagram using this device. You have a brand and there's something there. So, that's why we obviously wanted to bring you on here. So
yeah.
I
mean, so it comes like, cause you're a PT and you do the sports rehab. So I mean, I just take my, my background as a PT. I also I had a practice in Princeton and Lawrenceville and Yardley that was affiliated with the Hospital of Special Surgery in New York.
Okay.
And we were on site with spine surgeons and non-surgical spine guys every day for 10 years. So like, you just got everything you can imagine you could see.
Yeah.
So like, that's when I started evolving this. That was from 97 to 2008. Like I just started to create this, what I call column core training system. To kind of answer the questions that I would hear from customers, I call them customers, their patients, they would come in and say, well, I saw that my orthopedist and they told me never to run again. I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I said, we'll be back in 6 weeks and you'll run the rest of your life. I mean, that's just like nonsensical. So, so just, again, that piqued my interest into what I do today. So I ended up leaving that practice at that time because I felt like I wanted to do what I do now. I didn't want to just do straight clinical work with just, regular PT clients. I wanted to work with athletes. So I built this consulting business where, it was rowing based, where I've worked with thousands of rowers over the last, since 2008. So the last 12 years.
Wow.
And the machine just came out of this column core training system that I developed. It's a hands-on process. And I was just trying to find a way to make what I do. Like I have like 12 key exercises in this column core training system where I teach athletes this new internal map on how to move. Like it's a fundamental change in the way they move. And just out of my efficiency mindset, like I have this mind that just has to make things efficient, effective, and not waste time.
Right.
That was from day one. It always was like that. I just tried to figure out how to build a machine that could do all the singular exercises that I still use when I'm teaching somebody the base skills, but the machine kind of just takes me out of the equation. So, I have over 20 Division I schools that use my system, that train on it, and we basically get rid of their injuries. So
did you create that thing? Did you have someone fabricate that? Yeah. How did you first come up? How'd you first come along in creating that? Like what started the design of like what it looks like and like how you did it?
Yeah, so a good question. So at the time when I was doing, like I work on, so I do these evaluations and there's certain muscle systems that are weak pretty much in everybody I've ever tested. And I've done NFL guys, 1,000 Division I athletes. it's always there, you know. And so I have some key exercises that use the, you know, the 40-inch resistive bands, like the CrossFit bands, the 41-inch band.
Okay, yeah.
And so like I was using physio balls, and I would use the bands to do like basically what I call hip flexion pulls or runner pulls, where you kind of just draw on your knee into your chest, lift your legs right straight, and you're pulling your knee into your chest like you're really doing a hip flexion, knee flexion, ankle flexion movement with bands. And then I'd have a physio ball and do bridging on a ball. I was just trying to work on this common core training exercises. And I just decided one day, I'm like, there's got to be a way to like consolidate all this. So I have a pull-up bar in my garage. I just took a couple of the bands and I started to like pull myself down to the ground, you know, like a squat.
Yep.
And so I was activating all the opposing muscles, not just your quads and glutes and low back and lats. It was working your hip flexors, your hamstrings, your dorsiflexors. And then I was just trying to figure out a way to like, then my feet are coming off the ground and like so I'm just trying to figure out how do I, you know, fix this so I can move it. So that's really how the process started. And then I just came up with the, you know, the fixed tube system where the other piece moves and you have your feet can hook in or, you know, you have your hands on there. So it kind of just evolved through that, you know, and I didn't know what was going to happen when I built the first prototypes. After I broke the first few, I broke. Then I figured out how to do it, so it didn't break. It was mind-boggling how powerful it was. Because I'd already been a PT for 20-something years already, 22 years. So it wasn't like I hadn't seen everything. I was like, this is crazy. So, and for me personally, my shoulder problem, you know, I dislocated when I was 24 in 1988. It came out about 25 times over the years. Hard falls, body surfing, diving for a frisbee, and ultimate frisbee. It would just dislocate.
Just on its own.
Yeah, well, it hit the ground hard. So like daily life, I wouldn't pop out. So, you know, the surgeons were like, don't do surgery. But it was getting to the point where like I was body surfing the one day with my kids, you know, they're swimming in the ocean with me. I'm like, this isn't good. Like if I dislocate, like I might be able to help rescue my kids.
Right.
So
one arms.
Yeah. So I went to the surgeon. He's like, don't do it. But so anyway, I started training on my machine, the Kaehler core, and it's been 9 years. I've had really hard falls trail running, you know, wipeouts when you're in the park and nothing. It doesn't even flinch. So it's kind of mind-boggling because I don't have a labrum in the front or below because I've dislocated both directions. So I got no actual passive stability there really outside the muscle, and that's about it, you know. So anyway, it's a tool that can kind of enhance whatever you're doing, not just, you know, it's not the only thing you would do, but you know,
So is it a step by step? Is it like, are you going from the top of the body down through and you can use it for all different types of things?
Yeah, I mean, literally you could do stuff on, so the base level on movements are on your back, like motor development, right? You start on your back, you could do knees to elbow, you could do diagonal patterns. You could actually reverse the bands and you can do all pressing movements. So when you're on your back, you're disallowing your back to help move with your extremities. So most people are unaware completely that they actually do these micro movements with their back when they run or do anything really. So they're not aware that's what I call survival movement. Back moves with extremities to generate force. It works until it doesn't, until the back breaks down, until the leg breaks down, until they both break down, right? And so people train really hard until they get hurt. Right. And so if you start to teach the athlete how to actually connect all those, what I call the 20 vertebrae from the Adam's apple to the tailbone as one piece, truly as one piece, everything changes for the athlete. So you're creating this new control map that they're not even aware exists. They're not even aware that that's a possibility. They only know this, and you can do a lot with that, right? Everybody does. You see it everywhere in sports until they get hurt. And then they're like, oh, well, it's the activity did it.
Yeah.
And most times this really has nothing to do with the activity. It's user error, how they're actually working the body. And so the machine actually kind of expedites the process that I do.
Does it auto-correct you? Is it like an auto-corrector?
Well, it's a good question. So if you do level 1 exercise, when you're on the ground with your feet hooked in and your hands are on the handle, so you're actually creating a feedback loop. So the column system is delivering a fixed, rigid column of force. It's not an ambiguous up and down force of movement. Like with free weights, things move around. Here you actually a column-directed force. So if you actually have the tube running while you're doing the exercise, it's putting force right through your spine, in both directions.
Gotcha.
There's no other way to really do that. You know, like even with free weights, you don't even know you're moving. So with the college teams, we start them on the ground only for the first 4 to 6 weeks. They probably hate it because it's really hard. The knee to elbow core exercise is extremely challenging. Like people think it's. I mean, you look at the video, it doesn't show you anything. You get on the machine, it's going to crush you.
Yep.
Crush you.
Simple but hard. Yeah.
Very, very difficult. I mean, of course, you can change the intensity level, but most people can't even do the base level movements at the beginning. You know, because they've been used. So like if you just look at a curl up when you sit up, right? And they sit up and their back unfolds a little bit to sit up. But if you could actually, so like I do sit-ups, I could do a fold straight up without my back moving at all, not a millimeter. Easy.
All coming from the lower abdominal.
Yeah, just your back's not moving at all. You're just doing your hair flat. Everything else is engaging. So that takes some skill. I'm not saying other people don't do it. You have people that can do all this gymnastics, sports stuff there. I've never tested them, so I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they're more dialed in than your NFL guy who's got incredible ability to move their body from the outside, but they're actually still making the mistake as good as they are. And then they get hurt and they're like, you know, hamstring pulls and all that. That's just what I call chain movement mistakes. It has nothing to do with what they're doing. You know?
That seems to be a lot of what we're starting to notice, especially as we start to look at human performance more. And we start to look at what's going on with a lot of these athletes. You know, the athletes are getting bigger, they're faster, and you look at the way they're training. Because we brought on a guy who created that inertia wave system, and he was comparing that to battle ropes. And with the same concept as he created this inertia wave to basically stimulate this internal response in the body to teach people how to stabilize almost from within instead of out. And he used the battle ropes as an example where they create this external tension, you know, the shrugged neck, the tension in the wrist, you know, they're just trying to survive, the breathing's off. Whereas the inertia wave is whatever energy you put into it, you know, it gives you back and feedback. And I even noticed in some of the stuff that, you know, we do, you know, I do in the clinic, you're trying to teach people to tap into that inner system, but it seems like the tool you have helps provide a feedback so they understand how to do that. I mean, right. It's an experiential process. So like when I do the hands-on, and I still use it today because it's a powerful tool. So somebody that really is hurt, they really have a lot of back injuries, they're really just lousy. They're not even aware what that is, how to move that. They can move the joints here, but they don't really understand how to do that, you know, in a way that's like they're actually consciously aware of it. So in the hands-on system, so for instance, if somebody does a bridge, there's only two ways to bridge. You're either doing a moving back bridge or you're doing a column core bridge. That's it. There's no in between. And so I have the user do a bridge, and I have them pay attention. I just say to them, pay attention to where you feel muscle pressure, muscle activity, pain, whatever it is, and where you feel it. So it'll be low back, glutes, hamstrings, quads, wherever.
Right.
And so I have them feel it for like, you know, 10, 15 seconds. And I'm like, all right, now we're going to go back, and I'm going to start to teach you how to teach you to use your back like a column, not a moving back system. So then we go back, and I do some hands-on stuff, some specific cueing I've been doing for a long time. And within like 10 minutes, I can get them activating exactly what they need to do. So once they start to do that, I just built them a new map. Because now they know what they're looking for. So it's no different than motor development, right? Babies go through steps. Nobody's teaching them. They make a bunch of mistakes, and then they finally figure it out, and then they move on to the next milestone. Here, we're just trying to eliminate the mistakes. Yeah. Because they've been making the mistake really all along. Yeah. They just weren't aware that there was another way to do it. So that's the hands-on. Now the machine is the next level. It's just a much higher level because now we're actually taking force through the spine. So when you're doing a bridge, you're only looking at horizontal force through the spine. You're not really looking at through the spine, vertically loading and vertically pressing either way, right? So but I can still get them to do it. But you know, if you wanted to go to the next level with athletes and things, you know, you're going to want to, you know, take them to the next step. Yeah. That makes sense. So it's really like step one is like my private clients that come to me, I take them through a 3-hour process, and they're good. They're done. Like chronic back pain is gone. Yeah. Because they once they learn how to do this, and then if they want to go into the machine, cool. You know, so I have a couple clients, there's testimonials on my website the one woman, I saw her last year, about 18 months ago. She was a D1 soccer player, had 2 microdiscectomies in her 20s. So that was evidence she didn't know how to move her. Like, she was just hammering her back to pieces, right?
Yeah.
As good of an athlete as she just wasn't aware that there was another way to move. So I took her to the hands-on. Literally, I 15-minute session at the end of an evaluation, and I did another 45-minute session. And she emailed me from her vacation. She's like, this is like mind-boggling. Like, when she first saw me, she goes, I don't even know why I'm here. When I was evaluating, I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, PT's never worked before. I don't know why I'm here. I said, well, I'm going to show you something you've never learned before. So let's you got to be open-minded about it, you know? And so anyway, so she's like 18 months out. She's zero pain.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And so just as a kicker, so I was teaching her, so she bought one of my machines because she was moving to Colorado from Philly. Like, she was going to do a PhD program, had a 3-year-old daughter. She just wanted to get on the cardio machine for 20 minutes without having excruciating back pain or waking up every day with back pain for 20 years. I was teaching her how to use the machine at her house, and we were just talking, and I didn't put together her last name until she said, you know, my dad was a neurosurgeon. Her dad was Fred Simeone. He was like the back surgeon in Philly for 30 years, like the number one guy.
Wow.
Who owns that giant museum down at the Navy Yard, like that cool.
Oh, wow. Okay. Damn.
So anyway, she's just like, I was like, all right. And she goes, well, my dad really wants to meet you because he can't believe, because he was telling her she was going to need a fusion. Yeah. So she went to a spine surgeon to get to me because she was like, no, I'm not going to get the surgery.
Right.
You know? So anyway, she just does the Concours stuff. Like, at this point, she only does it a couple days a week, but she's able to go do all her life again without zero pain.
That's awesome.
You know, anyway, it's a connector. You know, it works for specific clientele, right? I mean, you can do it for any athlete, but really, it's like people
that was my question. And like, I mean, I see a lot of ACLs coming in, right? But before I even talk about that, like, just as a normal person coming in the door, if they screen through the FMS, right, and it doesn't look good somewhere along, maybe in the rotary stability or something like that, would that tool come into play then?
You mean FMS, or you saying my tool?
With your tool.
So the reason you
would be screened. Right. You would be screened, right? And then say you scored poorly in that rotary stability. Would that be something where your tool would come into play there, or could it be used for other things as well?
Well, so it's really, in the end, you're when you use moving back system as your default, you're born with that, right? Mm-hmm. Michael's witnessing that right now. Like, that's just like nature's teaching you to survive. It's not about longevity or quality of movement. It's not about surviving your back and making it live to your 80. It's really not about that. So, like, people get caught up in all this movement stuff with the back. You're just reinforcing what you've always done, but that's going to wear out, right? The reason the spine gets hurt is because it's moving out of its anatomical position, period. Mm-hmm. You want to do exercise and move your back, well, you're just putting yourself back in the chance of it wearing out, or you might hurt it again. You could do it as a rescue recovery. I'm not saying it doesn't work. You know, in therapy, where people use spine movement as recovery, you know, to get somebody out of the hole, but it really isn't a good long-term solution. That's just the honest truth. You're not teaching somebody a way to prevent it, because they're going to have to come back in 6 months or a year with another injury. Right. That's just the truth of what happens. So I don't do that. I just teach the person a new skill. Let them figure, you know, they're going to calm down and get better. Right. Could I move the spine? Absolutely. It was designed to move as an emergency survival system. It's really not a 24/7 system. It really isn't. Gotcha. We use it as one, and we wonder why we get hurt, and then we come up with all these stories about, well, you know, my parents have bad backs, blah, blah, blah. That's just, it's user error. It has nothing to do with any of that. Right. So anyway, so the machine can solve any problem, because you're just teaching. So if you have a sport where you have to do rotation, you still want to spend as much time as you can not train the back to be a non-moving system, and then you rotate when you have to. But if you're moving it all the time, your chance of getting hurt is greater. That's just the way it is. Yep. And they've got a better connective tissue, and they might not get hurt, but they're still underpowered. So that's the other side of the equation. The teams that I work with, they get a huge jump in performance in the first 8 weeks. I mean, dramatic, not like a little bit. Like, it would take me, like, guys, when I trained on the national team, it would take them 10 years to make the jumps we get in 8 weeks with these under 23 athletes, which is mind-boggling, where my friends that I talk to don't believe me. And I'm like, you know the same coach, and I know the coach. We've known him. Why you call him up? Because that's what's happening. like they can't believe guys I won world championships with. I'm just like, listen, this just changes the platform for the athlete. Now you can do all the other stuff you want to do, all the training, but now you have a real foundation to work off of, as opposed to, you could train this really hard and everybody does, but it's truly not the most
That
powerful.
sensory connection, I guess, right? I mean,
Yeah, because when you have somebody, a system in control of the body, you actually can develop feedback in the extremities. The strength and length has to come back. So when I retest an athlete, in 6 weeks, so I know it's all going to come back. I just taught them one thing: stop moving your back, and it's going to correct in a specific way. It's not that simple, but I just, really, it's all this is experiential. So you could look at somebody from the outside and look at them moving, but you don't really know what those micro movements are on their back. And that's a whole nother discussion. Like, I show you micro movements in your back, and you're just like, I do demos, and you're like, that's unbelievable. I can't believe that just happened.
Have you treated any like Olympic lifters that are trying to, because, with Olympic lifting, you have to have that full connection and understand how to get underweight, move the weight, all the complex movements. Will you use the Kaehler core system to teach them that connection on the extremities, and then notice that when they train, maybe all of a sudden their lifts get a lot better, smoother, something like that,
Yeah, I mean, I try, so like I'm a USAW, I'm a Olympic weightlifting coach certified. Leo Totten was the guy who I took his classes. He runs a gym out East Coast. I forget the gym, but he was on the Olympic team as a coach. But he didn't want me to come and touch his athletes. I just said, I'll come and evaluate them, just test them. I just wanted to test them out of curiosity, like you're asking.
Yeah. Right.
He just shut it down, though. Because I'm like, they're Olympic lifters. How am I going to hurt those guys? I'm just doing an evaluation.
Well, that's what we're definitely starting to notice too. I mean, you can take the NFL, for example. You've worked with NFL athletes. Guys, multi-million-dollar prospects, and they still get the injuries. And when you listen to the podcast with the guys who actually work with the pros, they're really exposing that, and they're saying that a lot of what's going on in those systems isn't as great as people think. Unfortunately, a lot of it is trash. There's a lot of people in there that just made their way into the system because they maybe knew somebody and not really qualified.
Totally.
And they're talking about that. There's a lot of guys there that too. I know Joe Ken. He's a guy for the Carolina Panthers strength coach. He does a lot of the powerlifting training too. On a podcast, he had said that you get guys who just get ego. They got these guys that, hey, we got 8 guys that could power clean this, but no one really cares when you're 2 and 12. So are you translating that training into your sport? And what good is the gym doing if it's not translating to your sport?
Or they're just getting hurt. So the last guy I worked with was a 9-year starter in the NFL. He played for Carolina and the Cardinals. And by the time I got to him, he had ruptured his quad tendon doing bounding in a sand pit. I'm like, wow. He should do that all day long. And then he got a chondral lesion doing a box jump. So like when I saw him, I actually tested him. It was, just imagine that you're lying on your back, just flat. And I tell you to sit up with your arms out at your side. How hard is that to do? Just lay on your back, just sit up to vertical with your trunk. How hard is that to do? Pretty easy, right? Couldn't do it. Couldn't sit up. Yeah. I'm like, wow. What? I was like, what?
Struggling to get
the jump landing of RG3. Do you remember that viral photo that came with his knees collapsing in?
Yeah.
That was really an eye-opener for a lot of the public because they had seen this prospect who was going to be the next great quarterback, and then you look in the combine, and then they talked about putting him through the FMS and all that stuff, but somehow it still failed because he tore his ACL twice.
Yeah.
And he had James Andrews doing his surgery, but it just goes to show that you have these guys, and even though they get really good at their sport specific, like you're saying, they're missing these foundational components.
Yeah, you're right. It's totally 100% true. So it kind of goes back to your question, Joe, when you were asking me about FMS. The reason I started this whole process was because of that. Yep. So I went through the course, and I'm like, and now what? What do you do with all that? Like, you just assess somebody, but how do you solve the problem? That doesn't solve any of the problem. That just identifies some.
Yeah.
So that's really where that process started.
So that kind of becomes your version of a corrective, right?
So it's a holistic change in the way you move.
Right.
And then you can stack all the other skills on. So like, I never get anybody on weights until they can do basic stuff because they don't have the control to do it safely.
Yeah,
That's just
Exactly.
happening out.
Exactly. Why add that external load when they can't handle their body weight load?
Yeah.
Just the movement control. So as they get better, you can go back to all that stuff.
Right.
And, and it's faster, right? So that's what we saw at the college kids. They were, not only did we get rid of their injuries, like the Harvard heavyweight men was the first team I went back to with it. And in 8 weeks, those guys, not only did all the injuries, go away, to the point where the trainer assigned to rowing actually called Charlie, who's my buddy, up on the phone. And she's like, well, where's everybody? And he's like, well, I don't have anybody hurt. And she's like, what? And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, I don't have anybody injured. So the athlete just started to make the connection. They don't have to even know why. They just making them do, and then you notice the technical changes start to happen. So then you can train your athletes at the next level.
Yeah.
Like, so for a coach, it's just like a gold mine because, I'm just teaching them a new fundamental way to control their body. And then, when you force the extremities to do 100% of the work, they get way stronger. They get longer. They definitely get stronger. And if they're inflexible, they get longer automatically. You're forcing it to happen. So here it's like, that's why you have the deficits.
Here's where a big challenge is too. And I actually talked to Gray Cook personally about this in the FCS course I took in the fall. And, the problem is with these insurance companies running everything, they only still see the one body part. And they don't have the understanding as that the body works together.
Yeah,
they see knee, and they don't understand why there's ankle and pelvic and core stuff. They just see knee. Like they're still stuck in the 80s and 90s. Right. And as we're developing as a profession, it's also our job as PTs and health professionals to get it out there as an educational component, like with the stuff you're doing, to get them to understand how this body is connected and understand why. So even when we document, even if we weren't doing insurance, say we're doing self-pay, to explain to the patient why all this is connected and why everything has to move together. Because like you said, looking at a fusion as a solution. Well, sometimes the surgeons only think, this is what I know how to do, this is what I fix. This person doesn't know how to move their back. It's having problems. Well, let's just fuse it together so there's no more pain. And people want that. They want to just get out of the pain, but then they have no core stability. They're just walking around with this frozen back, and they still are having issues.
Right. So the levels above are going to wear out because they're still making the same mistake.
Yeah. And I'll see that with people who come in, you'll have them lie on their back. They can't even breathe through their stomach. And then how many trainers say tighten your core? The average person has no idea what that means, especially when we spend their time sitting, driving, doing all these things that negate those primitive movements. And, all those articles that I put out that I write for one of my sponsors, I always go back and explain, because these are not only getting read by like elite athletes, but also just the average people that want to compete in like the OCR community and stuff like that. Understand, well, why am I doing this exercise? Why is it important? I want them to understand that there are certain things that are really important to us as being a bipedal mammal, and why we have to understand that association with the core and the hips, and why we're doing certain things. Because there's 1,000 exercises, but how do we know what's important for us?
So, yeah. So this is a unification system. That's as simple as it makes it. It changes the way the athlete or the user, they learn a different. You have a choice of movement now. You're either moving your back with your extremities or you're not, and there is no in between. And most people don't, even when they plank and stuff, they're still moving their back. They think they're planking, but they're really not.
Yeah. So what I like about the FMS systems is they continue to evolve. So when I went to that FCS course, that was a little bit more of, okay, you have someone that moves really well, they look really stable, but now what happens when you load them with extra force? And then you start to see, the body starts to break under that stress. So now we're starting to get some objective data from that. But like you said,
yeah,
what are the tools we use? What do you do with that? Because that's what Gray Cook kept emphasizing. The FMS is not the be-all. It's this whole battery of test it and compass. You have the FMS, then you have the SFMA, and then you have the FCS. And these are all just evaluation tools to look at the individual. Now, they give examples of corrective exercise. They use the primitive system. They start with, the unloaded, the supine, then they go to quadruped, then they go to tall kneeling, half kneeling. And they progress it like the way a baby kind of progresses. And can you learn to control your body in these different positions? You can't even control your body on your back. Like you're saying, how can you do it when you're standing with on your back? So I progress my patients that way. But what's cool is it's not be all end all. Like I think a lot of PTs, including myself at first, thought that whatever these exercises that they give is like what you got to do. It's just a concept. So
Right.
like you said, you could use
Guidelines.
your
The
tool.
guidelines.
Yeah, you could use your tool if that's going to help reteach them how to control in this position. That's distinguished. Or you could use the Cook FMT band, or you could use
Right.
this, But
Yeah,
what
right.
you're saying is yours you develop as a system that really helps them gain all that connection with that, all that.
Yeah, and you can apply all those things to that. So like you're going to take that fundamental change in their movement system, apply it to any movement you want to do from there. So it's really the fundamental foundation of change that opens doorways to whatever you want to do. And it just maximizes, how the extremities actually really should be working. So, and again, I've done this with thousands of people, so I could do it in seconds. I can line the spine up. I know how to plug in. Like I call it like you're gonna get into Legos pretty soon. I've had Legos on my floor for like 20 years, but like the analogy I describe to clients is like you take the flat Legos and you lay them out like those 20 pieces from the Adam's apple tailbone. The Legos that don't hurt when you step on them. Then you plug in the bricks, the ones that do hurt when you step on them in the middle of the night, right? And so what happens is like if you're missing a couple bricks, it doesn't complete the circuit. So let's say I was doing a bridge. If I'm missing a couple of bricks, the circuit's not complete. I'm actually using my back to do part of the bridge, and I don't feel the activation of my legs the way I should. All I do is I get them lined up so all the bricks are plugged in. All of a sudden, they feel it's a totally different exercise. A moving back bridge and a conical bridge are not the same exercise. One's training your back to do most of the work. The other's training your legs to do the work. And so once they feel that, I'm just building a new map for them.
Yeah.
Now they start to have a choice of movement. You can either move your back or you don't. And so you just want them, the more times you don't move your back, the better chance you have of not hurting yourself. That's just the way the body works.
Yep.
And it optimizes their legs. So those injuries you get in the legs, the ACLs, the ankle sprains. So like I can't tell you how many ankle sprains I've seen. I don't even touch their ankle 99% of the time because they're not really weak there. I test them. I'm just looking at what's going on up here. And then we look at what's weak. And I say, start with this. And if your ankle's still bothering you in a week or two, we'll treat your ankle. And 95% of the time it's gone after a week. Because they have chronic ankle sprains, not going away. I'm like, listen.
What about someone who's got an ankle mobility issue? I mean, I just had a girl, her ankles, I mean,
I sent her over to Mike. She was walking like her feet were like
Bob, these are the worst ankles I've ever seen. There's 80-years-olds that have better ankles. It's like, how are you doing this right now? So how would you go about that? That is just, a localized mobility issue.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question. I think really what I look at is I go back to holistic movement patterns. So if I had them, let's say, on their back, I'm going to work on all three leg flexors together: hip flexor, hamstring, and ankle flexor as one unit. And so like on the machine, when you're looking at like when I do those squat downs, where you're squatting down, the tension is getting greater and greater and greater.
Okay.
You do that squat, your dorsiflexors are firing like crazy in that exercise, like nuts, more than a squat or anything that you're doing. And so like I just try to pull the pattern together as one piece. So a lot of times that stiffness is a manifestation of poor control up top somewhere else. And that's a protective blocking mechanism. So,
what if they're having pain in the ankle when you're doing this? You get a lateral ankle sprain and they're having the pain when they go to the dorsiflexion range they can tolerate?
So to be honest with you, at that point, I start them all on table stuff first, like teaching the calm core system and get them going on the new fundamental change. And then most of the time that pain's gone by the time they're up and doing stuff. And they've actually restored some of their, this, flexibility and strength are the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're weak on one side, you're going to be tight somewhere else. They go hand in hand. So I'm just looking at how can we clarify all of it so the body can heal itself.
Okay.
So the moving back system is like you get a cut on your arm and you just pick the scab every 5 seconds. It's not really a healing process. Yeah. It's not a corrective system. It really isn't. The calm core system, you get a cut, you don't touch it. Your body will start to correct itself when you give it the right impetus.
Okay.
I just fell into what the right impetus is, only because it works every time. It's like really 99%.
So it's interesting you say that because, they have started to implement, some of the cool correctives we do, or like some of the mobility drills, some of the newer stuff that the FMS system's added is regaining mobility with movement. So it's not just standing there doing a static calf stretch, something like that. It's like we do some of these like toe touch movements or these half kneel positions where we're learning to regain mobility in the hip, the knee and the ankle while learning to control our bodies. I mean, we surprised that people on the half foam roll in a split stance position. So one heel's up and then the back foot, the toes are up. And then they gotta so they're dorsiflex on the back foot and then they're plantar flex on the front, and it's like a kickstand. They gotta go down and touch their toes, and their balance is all over the place. They have to learn how to control up here, just trying to go down and touch their toes. So we're regaining mobility in the ankle, but we're learning to make that neuromuscular connection as well. So it sounds like it's kind of something that the Kaehler core will do. Even if you start on their back, if you're having them do a press out or coming back in, they're learning that control and then regaining the same way.
Yeah, so what it does, it holistically, it corrects those things start to fire the right way down your ankle. They're firing out of order because they don't really the muscles are not sequencing properly. There's some muscles are weak and just like a mess. You got all this neural confusion. It's almost like the brain GPS map is off.
Yeah.
It's like fuzzy, and so you got this fuzzy map and you really can't tell exactly where you are, and so really most control for humans comes from the balance of the spine moving. It doesn't come from the spine being the controller, and so that's really where a lot of these errors show up. So the athlete doesn't even know they're doing it. So I take them through a series of side leg lifts and other stuff. I teach them how to stop their back movements, just understand what it really is, because they don't know what it is. A side leg lift with a moving back system is not the same exercise. And so once you learn this map, so I haven't got to the point where I teach this course yet, but I just know because I jump back in the PT world to see what would happen with regular people, because my business is all sports athletes, and I have 2,000 evaluations. I got a stack of fully everything written down, everything.
Wow.
So I understood that was what was happening. So I was like, hey, how do I teach it to somebody who has zero movement connection with their body? Or a little bit, not the same as an athlete that's maybe a little bit better, but they're still not that great, And so, that's really what I've been doing the last few years, is trying to tie it all together, and it works the same. It's crazy, but it works the same. So once you get somebody who's got, they got to be motivated, right? Like everybody. So that's not all your PT population, but part of it is.
Yeah.
For you, Joe, it's you got motivated athletes. You're just trying to I want to get them to the next level, but I want to do it where they're not going to get hurt, because if they get hurt, then I don't have a customer.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
I won't have a job very long after that either.
And it's not anybody's fault. Nobody's trying to get somebody hurt. It's just if you don't know what you don't know, you're not aware that there's another way to do stuff. It's just not as powerful. That's all. So really, my business is about empowering coaches and athletes to just crush it, because you should,
Yeah.
And then you could do whatever you want after that. That's the beauty of the system. Right.
So
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when they use a training system, is there they have a training program? Will they use the Kaehler core and then maybe go do a workout or something after, or is it just
absolutely?
Okay, so they use that maybe as part of a warm up or something?
Yeah. So the college teams will use athletes generally spend about 15 minutes on it 3-4 times a week. They do it as the coaches run them through it. All the coaches I have that own my system, they train on it personally, because once they start training on it, they're not going to train on anything else. Okay. So one of my things with my marketing is I want the coach to train on it. I want them to see what's going to happen to their body, because they're mind boggled at what happens.
Yeah.
So then when they go to teach their athletes, I know they're committed to do what really needs to be done.
Sure, because they're bought in at that point.
They can feel it.
They can feel it, exactly.
Right. So because you can't read a book about how to ride a bike and then ride a bike.
Right.
You have to experience it. So if a coach doesn't experience it, I don't know if they know what riding a bike feels like.
Right.
They might not have heard a bike. So really, just for my own experience, it's really the best way to do it. So when you lift weights, the classic example of traditional weightlifting, I always ask, because I've done over 1,000 Division I athletes. I've tested them. I've gone and worked on the campuses. You name the top school, I've been there. I've worked with the teams. I've evaluated all of them. But the first question I ask them when I'm with the group is I said, well, how many of you feel uneasy when you're doing a max squat? They all raise their hand. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, why do you think that? I said, when you're on a leg press, how does it feel? No problem. I said, the limiting factor in all your sports performance is not your quads and your glutes. The last thing you need to be doing is making them stronger. Until you get your spine under real control, mm-hmm. you're going to keep getting hurt. You're going to struggle. You're not going to make the progress you could. And you can have all those other injuries because you're still using this moving back system. So So really, the system just offers the athlete an experiential change in how they feel internally, so they can actually start to make even more powerful movements when they do whatever you're doing.
Right.
Right. And so really, that's what the process does. So like, to answer your question about the ankles, like, I used to get chronic rollover sprains when I started trail running in Tyler like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Like literally every, you know how rocky that is. Every time I go, I'd roll over, I'd offer for a minute, hobble back, ice it. I would do traditional PT movements. Nothing changed. Once I started training, I've been training on my machine for 9 years, nothing, zero.
Awesome.
Never even flinches ever. I can run as hard as I want. And that's just being truthful. That's not being a salesman. I'm just like, it's crazy, you know. But you don't have to do a lot. Once you get those systems going, it's like on maintenance drive. Then you don't have to do a ton. And then you can do all the stuff you want, all the other things you really need to do as a coach, become more powerful.
Yeah.
And your chance of the athlete getting hurt is almost gone, really. I mean, there's always a chance, but it's very, very small.
I gotta try this thing.
Yeah, you got to get on it. So that's why I was saying, once you get on it, I can't explain to you what
We'll
it
be
feels
over
like.
next week. Mike and I'll be over next week.
Whatever. I'm always I was at Tyler tonight. Got on my machine, the Kaehler court, did some warm up, and then went for a run.
I'm surprised I haven't seen either one of you guys. I'm in there an awful lot. I'm gonna have to go close.
Yeah, you walk around the fields and take pictures, man. You gotta like run in the trail.
I'm scaring the crap out of the deer. Like, come up on them, they're like, whoa, what the hell are you doing?
We gotta get you in touch with Shaq, man. John Shackleton. He does a performance training for Villanova men's basketball. We had him on here. He lives 5 minutes up from me. We train together, but that'd be great to introduce us to those guys, because combined with him and what he's doing, add this in with those kids, man. Maybe they'll start sweeping championships, you know?
Right?
It's really, you know, like so I did a study on just real quick on the NFL when I was starting with the NFL guys. I was just looking. I would go every week and take, you know, because they have to report every injury. So I would take out all the concussions and traumatic injuries that were from like getting crushed by like a 300-pound guy. But I just looked at all the hamstring, groin pulls, anything that was like, you know, and I was just looking at how performance went versus, you know, and so like you looked at the injury level and who was winning. And so the teams that had the least injuries were the guys at the top.
Yeah, because it's
not like
it's a game of attrition, right? I mean, it's
pretty much, you know.
You start looking at games, you know, games missed by teams, and those teams that have lots of players missing games, chances are they're not even in the playoffs.
Right, but also the other thing that injuries show you is that the athlete's not optimized for their true potential.
Right.
They're leaving money on the table. So some athletes are a little bit better at controlling their spine. Some are worse. They're not getting it 100%, but so that's a differentiator between when I see the injuries in the NFL. I know they're not doing what I'm teaching,
right?
But they're closer to it, so that's why they have less injuries. For whatever they're doing in their strength training, they're probably hitting some of it. I don't really know because I didn't test them all. I can only speculate, but you know, so like I know that for a fact that those injuries are going to go away if you do the right thing. Because there's no reason you should ever get hurt running.
Right. If
you're really balanced, your extremity should be optimized so you never get hamstring. But why would that happen?
I got a girl that I'm seeing right now, 13-year-old, was having some hamstring issues and then just stepped on the ball the other day and kind of extended. And that was like the straw, you know, that broke the camel's back really at that point. So now she's in, you know, working on some hamstring rehab there.
Yeah,
so, you know, which is, I think, going to be and I was saying this to Mike, this will be the biggest soft tissue injury over the next 3 to 4 months.
You're talking about like all the sports stuff going back. You mean
just because, I mean, I'm seeing it with soccer players already. Everyone's like been grabbing at the back of their leg, you know, it's just, how do we prevent some of that?
Yeah. So again, I think that's, you know, I can't say for sure because I'm not taking those kids from that level, but I know it's gonna, you know, you'd have to get the kids, you'd have to sell them and motivate them to do this kind of training. You'd have to teach them it. That's really what, you know, I'm kind of at a grappling point of like, I really want to teach this to other people, but I'm also trying to drive my business at the same time. So it's kind of like a catch-22. I just know in what I do, because I do coverage for Penn, I still do some PT coverage. I cover for 100 different therapists. And I know what they do. all teaching moving back system. That's just the reality. I don't teach 1 second of it because I'm like, you're already good at it, and that's why you got hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not going to just teach you more. I can't teach you more of that because of what I know.
Right.
I can teach you the same exercise. I'm just going to teach you how to do it a different way. So what I do is I just go and
That's 10 of cat camels.
yeah, I don't do any of that. I'm like, you're already a master at moving your back. Why do you want to move it more? You know, I mean, look, you have to move it in some sports. I'm not saying you don't, but you can't spend all your time moving your back and expect a great result.
Well, here's a good example. What about gymnasts, you know, and they're pushing them into the extreme lordosis for the backflips and stuff.
Hypermobility.
I
Yeah,
mean,
mobility.
my guess is if you did some of this, it would create more longevity. They're still smashing their backs to pieces. That's just the aesthetic value of doing gymnastics. However, I would speculate that if they did concord training, they would last a lot longer and not have the serious long-term back problems they're gonna have for the rest of their lives, just to look great. You know, I mean, it looks beautiful and all that stuff.
Right.
You're moving your back in this emergency system like that, you're gonna wear it out. There's just no way around it. I mean, you know.
So I mean, one of the biggest, I guess, you know, issues we see is that you know these kids, they want to play sports all year round. I said that to the last girl I did a performance test on. I said, "You play soccer all year round?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you're basically a professional athlete. You're just not getting paid. It's the same thing. You want to go all year round, but if you want to do that, how are you expected to perform, but there's no maintenance? There's never a step back to focus on any of the things that you are missing. These foundations. It's soccer.
Or just detraining. Like you got to detrain if you want to go up. You can't just go up. You got to go down, up.
You need that deload time. Yeah. That deload.
And so they don't do that.
It's trying to get them to understand that we don't need to spend 2 hours in the gym of doing stuff. You know, it's like you said, 15 minutes on this device can teach you some of these fundamentals that you could translate better into your sport. You know, and get them to understand that you can get a lot done in even 30 minutes. They just need to take the time away, even if it's like, you know, just take one of those clubs off. Like, is it so much important to do a winter inside soccer club? Take the winter off and just spend 2-3 months of just focusing on this type of stuff. So you come back into that club soccer that you're really going to have the recruits coming and looking at you and saying, wow, we've gotten better, because the parents are like, she's got to get faster. And I'm like, where do you think speed and power comes from? I mean, she doesn't know how to move. How are we going to generate that force, you know? So they don't understand that. That's the biggest problem, you know?
Probably the hardest part. Like, you know, when you look at sports and all those systems you're talking about, it's all external observation, external look, skill, movement, and we're going the other way around. I'm like, you need to build this fundamental internal control system, and then all that external stuff's gonna get way better. Like all the mistakes you're making, all the speed errors you have, you know, at some point you're gonna, you know, once you start training the system, you're gonna reach a plateau like anybody, but you're gonna be 15% better. You know, like you're just raising your whole platform, and then, you know, then of course there's gonna always be, you know, you're gonna start to, you know, trim off, because like at the world class level, like you're gonna make like 0.1% gain, but that's a lot, you know. But in high school, they can make 20% gain. But I think it's really more like what you're saying. Everybody wants the outside stuff. They want to look at the stopwatch, how fast they're going, how quick they can do these drills. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't have all the power you really could, and you're going slower than you would if you did this.
Yeah,
I know that for sure. I know you're gonna go faster. That's what I see with my customers, is that they just get these huge jumps in performance. You know, and then it's gonna get harder once they get to like elite level, but they're still never gonna get hurt, so they're not losing athletic development time.
Right.
That's the other thing that, you know, so like these college teams, they have 22 weeks of training time. That's it. You got a person in an athletic training room for 10 weeks, they just lost like 40% of their training year. They only got 8 of those, you know, for their whole career. So you can't have somebody losing their athletic skill level, even for what you're doing with this girl that's hurt. Like, she's 13, like, you know, she should be out running around doing stuff, not getting rehab.
Yeah.
And that's not you. That's just like, she just doesn't have fundamental control. So I think that's really what I try to offer. Like, you don't need to do a lot. You just need to, you know, get these people starting to figure out, do stuff a different way.
Move off and move well.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, that's what we start thinking too as a PT. I mean, I made the mistake of you giving these like these whole encompassing shell of exercises, and it's like, what does this person really need to be doing? So I kind of get to the niche of and telling patients, you don't need to do 1,000 exercises. You got to find where the deficit is and continue to hammer that and progress that and translate it. So sometimes, you know, yeah, I've done it before in my younger years. You come in and you're just giving patients like all this crazy stuff, and it's like they don't really need that, you know. And then, my best example is the PT. I've done it before too. Let's get real. The dynamic stability. That's the big the key term in the documentation. Dynamic stability. They're on like a wobble board and they're doing rows and they're like all over the place, and it's like this person's trying to survive. What are they learning from this, you know? And it's like, Jesus, back off all that external stimuli, and you know.
I use 3 exercises almost for everybody. That's it. I never get in PT clinic. I never get anybody on weights because they're nowhere near the skill level to lift weights. They're just not.
Yeah.
You get this down, what I'm teaching you, and then their pain goes away, and then they're, you know, if they're going to high level sports, you're going to have to do that. But it's a waste of time. I don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
0.
I use.
And these people are like coming back and they're complaining, like, God, my hamstrings are so sore. I don't know how it's possible from doing those simple movements. I'm like,
yeah.
I said, because we're making them do all the work now. You just, your whole life have been like,
I have people come in and they want their goals. They want to go golf 18 holes, and I have them on their back, and we're trying to retrain doing a bridge properly, and their hamstrings cramp up. They lifted their ass up twice, and they're spasming. And I didn't hydrate enough. I'm like, no, that's not it. You know,
water.
Yeah.
So I think part of it too is like, you know, because I've been doing this, I've done it with thousands of athletes. Like I have a very specific system and story I teach the athlete. So they get it by the end. And I think that's part of the part of what I need to do, because it's almost so simple, it's hard to believe, but it's so powerful. It's just crazy powerful. So, and that's why when I treat, I don't do any of that other stuff, because I know it's inconsistent. And it's a rescue. Those are rescue systems that work for a little bit, but I know they're going to be back later in 6 months.
It's just that recurring cycle.
Yeah, they're going to get another injury, and then
in 6 weeks, right.
Whatever. I mean, so like, I'm not saying the PT's not trying to help them, because they are.
Sure.
It's just that system's been around for 50 years. It doesn't work.
They're not learning that new motor pattern that they need.
From a long-term, what I mean doesn't work. It doesn't work from a long-term thrive system for their spine. It's really just, it rescues them. They get out of pain. They do some movements and they feel better. And that's all, you know, that's all good. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just thinking about like 5 and 10 years down, like that's not the best way for you to be moving. You're just in emergency mode all the time. And, you know, when you're in emergency mode, your chance of getting hurt is significantly higher. It's not that the spine isn't durable as hell, because it's a really, really durable system, but eventually it wears out. You can move a couple million times, it's probably going to wear out. You know, so really, so anyway, this whole conflict training process is just a fundamental change in creating a new map for the user, so they can go kick butt and then go do all the other stuff that you want to do. All of it, it's all good. And so I don't get into all the other stuff, because I need them to do this first, because they can't do that stuff. That's too intense, right? Like day 1 baby's not doing day 365 stuff on day 2. It doesn't work that way. Right. And so we want it to be that way, and that's survival system. So that's what I tell people: when you're in the moving back system or chain system back movement, you're day 365 baby. When I start you in common core system, you're day 1 baby. Day 1 baby ain't doing day 365 stuff on day 2. You need to get through this, and then we can get to that. And it's not going to take you long. It won't take that long. Like the neural pathways take about 3 weeks to jump back in. Literally, I've done college athletes that I saw chronic back pain when the coach sent them to me privately. I retested them 3 weeks later when I did the whole team, and they made dramatic change in strength, and the back pain was already gone.
Wow.
Just by shifting the way they were moving. So the athlete was like, you know, they didn't care because they just wanted to go do their sport, but they were just happy to be out of pain. I was trying to make them understand, like, this is really a long-term life movement system. It's not just about rescuing you from the current problem you have, which is going to, like the surgeon's daughter. That surgery didn't teach her to change the movement error. It just corrected the one level, and she kept doing the same movement error. It never went away, because you never corrected the problem. You just like putting a Band-Aid on there.
Cortisone injections fix the problem.
Hey guys,
you know, and to be honest with you, I learned that working for the spine surgeons at HSS. Those guys didn't need work. they would say 90% of all surgeries done in the United States are done unnecessarily in the spine. Those guys would tell us that. They're like 90% are a waste of time.
Wow.
That's the honest truth. That's what they would say. So that's why they had us there.
Right.
They had us there because they knew they didn't need work. We had people come from all over, from Europe, and like they were coming from everywhere because these guys are like top surgeons. But they didn't really want to do surgery unless they had to. That's how they viewed it. Like they wanted success out of the surgery. They just didn't want a paycheck out of the surgery or whatever, you know.
Gotcha.
So anyway, that's part of this. That's part of the unfolding of how I got through this process. Just seeing thousands of people and figuring out there's a different way to do it. And you know, it's taken a long time, but like I have it down where it's just like I could do it in seconds now. Right. Literally in 15 minutes, I could start to teach somebody. But it's really just an eye opener for, you know, in the PT world, I can't even broach this subject because, and I don't bother right now because I'm more into the coaches and the athletes because they don't care about the story about you need research and like, you know, Mackenzie's been around for whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But like still people are getting hurt doing that stuff.
Too many PTs that are stuck in the box. They don't want to think outside.
Totally.
They don't.
So I just go in and do my thing and like get the people better.
Yeah.
They're like, when are you coming back? You know, and I'm like, well, I'm you know, because I float around. I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I showed you 80% of what you need to do today. So you just got to practice it. Like you don't really need, you know, they only need 2 or 3 sessions and they're done. They don't need 20 sessions.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So like, and that's part of what I do.
We get to this part in the podcast here. I am up against the time here. I don't mean to be rude, but we do like a little bit of a speed round here. So I fire away 3 questions at you, and you know, just kind of give us a summary of it. But you know, the first one is, what are some of the things that are keeping you awake at night right now?
I mean, for me personally, it's not spreading my message as fast as I should be. Like reaching the biggest audience, because I know this is such a valuable thing that I've developed and fine-tuned that, yeah, so like I'm always like, you know, like I'm working on marketing, I'm doing digital, you know, all these things just to like get more people involved. So that's why I'm here tonight. You know, I just want to share.
Good start, man. We're going to share the hell out of it and let people know.
That's it.
So that's number one. Like,
okay.
Yeah, and how to pay for my daughter's college. Because it's
there you go. There you go. All right, number two. What are some of your success habits?
I mean, number one is consistency. Not so one of the things that doing all that 30 plus hours a week training for 15 years and surviving it all, I just realized that really you could do all that stuff. Like I could do 2 or 3 hours a week, just consistent. I don't do a lot, but I get a ton of massive results out of it. And it's just that it's really more being just consistent. Don't do a ton. Don't get crazy and like stress yourself out if you miss a workout or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like you just got to go and hit it a couple times a week or whatever. And so really that's really consistency is always number one.
Consistency is key.
Yeah, I mean with efficiency. I call it consistency with efficiency. Not to do all these crazy workouts. I did all that stuff.
Right.
Most of the time, it's you're spending so much extra energy. It's not necessary to get massive results. Mm-hmm. And that's another story. I could like my last 4 years of rowing. I trained so little compared to the rest of the team because I was able to do it on my own. Right. And I still crushed it. Absolutely. So I was figuring out all these systems, and I've read extensive programming on this, rest cycles and training cycles. I have a whole system that's just bulletproof. I've done it with Ironman triathletes and marathon runners. Crushing it with very little work, you know. So just maximizing every second you're out there. How do you do that? So consistency with efficiency is really that would be number 2.
All right. Last one. Kind of ties into 1 and 2, but what is your biggest obsession right now?
My biggest obsession is, I mean, it's really just growing the Kaehler core business. Really is it's sharing this common core knowledge. It does go back to 1. I just obsessed with focus on it, keep going until I break through. You know, at some point there's an accelerator to come. You know, just like TRX, it was when I'm on the same timeline. It took him 10 years, and then Drew Brees showed up. Mm-hmm. And the second Drew Brees showed up, it changed his business forever. He wasn't selling a ton before that. So it's just getting to, you know, showing the power of the system and just being, you know, like I'm just like obsessed with getting this because I know how powerful it is, for people to do it. And so they go have fun. Just kick butt, and stuff.
You got 2 more guys that are going to be jumping in on this.
Yeah,
so,
definitely. We'll do a training session on it. Just get out there.
I would love it. I would love that.
So we can get George or Michael's time down to 450, right?
Yeah, man, that's my goal. I want to try to get under the.
How about 445?
Huh?
How about 445?
Yeah, man, that would clip it by 5, man. By 5 seconds. So.
You got to beat that guy who was what, a 62-year-old, just ran a 449, right?
Oh, did he?
Broke the world record. Guy never ran a mile before. He's like a 5K cross country runner.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, no, he just did it like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Wow,
He was
449, huh?
He was doing because of COVID, there was no races, so he stopped doing a long distance running. He just jumped on the track, and he didn't know. And then he just did one of the senior things, and he broke the world record. He ran a 449 mile at 62. So anyway, not to make you feel bad, but
That's all right. Hey, Michael.
You would be a good experiment, though. Really.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it. That'd be great because I know that I have compensations. I'm aware of things. You try to learn to fix it and stuff, and I'm always open to new techniques and things, and it's great. And that's what's cool about the whole obstacle course racing scene is it's very dynamic, and a lot of athletes have all different systems and plug and play and different things. So, the sky's the limit and try stuff to find that right algorithm for each person,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So hopefully that answered your questions, though.
Yeah, that was great stuff. Hey, listen, so we always do this too. Where can people find you on social media? What's the best places to find you?
And so my website's just Kaehler Core, Kaehler core.com. And that's the same Instagram account. It's Kaehler, Kaehler _core. That's my Instagram page. Okay. And that I post like exercise movements, all different movements you can do on there. And so those are the 2 best ways to get a hold of me, and
awesome.
And just to learn more about column core training and the machine.
Michael, where can they find you?
iCore_St. George on Instagram.
All right, you can find me at Coach _Haas, HOS, and also on Facebook at Coach Haas. Also on YouTube, if you go into the search box, you can put in Coach Haas. We've got tons of stuff out there. Bob, I want to thank you again. We will be in touch shortly. The 3 of us will be out and we'll get a workout in.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on tonight too, guys. Thank
you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Michael, I'll talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Get some sleep, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Take care.
All right, guys.